All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming news podcast. My name is Hat,
And I'm Eric.
And I am Stan.
and today we are going to be talking about the Inside Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode 2. So this is similar to the prior video that we were talking about, where Square is giving these little promotional videos out where they're interviewing the developers working on the remake, and they're going into some of the reasoning why they're doing certain things with the game and just talking about the game in general. A lot of interesting tidbits in there we want to get into. We're also going to talk about the Nintendo Mini Direct that came out this week. They say mini, but there was some interesting stuff in there. So we're going to get into all the RPG related stuff in there. We might talk a little bit about the Panzer Dragoon release as well, but we're excited to talk about that. And then we're also going to be giving our Bravely Default 2 demo impressions. And then Eric is going to be giving his thoughts on Final Fantasy Brave Exvius War of the Visions, which we're very curious about. So we're anxious to hear his thoughts. Before we get this podcast started, I just want to go out there and explain. Normally we try to stream these on YouTube, but I updated OBS shortly before we started this video. Shame on me. I should have known. Update things after, but it's just not wanting to stream right now. So instead of taking an hour to try to figure that out, we're just going to record this podcast, upload it, and that'll have to work. So moving on to our first topic here. Like I said in the intro here, we had Inside Final Fantasy VII Remake. This is kind of a promotional piece where we're interviewing the developers, or, Square is kind of having the developers talk about making the Final Fantasy VII Remake, where they're focusing on the story and the characters this particular round. And there was a lot of really interesting stuff in there for us to get into. And we've kind of pulled out some interesting quotes that we're just going to kind of go over and read, because, the video is actually in Japanese, there are subtitles, but it's just a little bit easier to talk about with the actual quotes here. So we can kind of trade off on this if you want, but I know that the first one here is largely focusing on Katase, where he's talking about forgetting little details of the world, right? And that he actually went back and replayed Final Fantasy VII before working on the game. So he replayed the game in its entirety just to refresh his memory, and upon replaying the game, Katase reflected on the game's narrative, and he was surprised that the Midgar section, how short it was compared to what he remembered. And that portion stood out to him. So he was really surprised by this brisk pace that you went through the city. And he just didn't remember it being that short, right? So he said, because of that, this is Katase speaking here, because of that, in the remake, I want people to experience the iconic city of Midgar closer to how I had remembered it, as a much deeper and more expansive location. So we have put great effort into going even deeper into Midgar in the new game, adding in new elements and extra layers of detail to now show more of this world than we did in the original. Stan, you were initially the one that kind of picked this quote out. Did you have something you wanted to bring up there? I have some thoughts too, but I guess I would just pass it over to you first here.
Yeah, it's interesting that he said that it's all based on how he felt at the time, right? So when he played the game at the time, he felt like it was Midgar was a much bigger game, or a much bigger location, right? Than it actually turns out to be, because in reality, we've all just replayed the game recently. Like, you can beat it in, 5 hours, and that's even if you're taking your time,
Right.
So, but when he played it the first time, and I think we can also agree with this, it didn't feel like it was 5 hours. It probably felt a lot longer. And I think part of that is how new it was, right? How new the technology was of kind of the 3D RPGs. And also because we were much younger at the time. We didn't have so many JRPGs under our belt, as we do now. So it's just interesting that maybe because we've been speculating for a long time that it's probably the company meddling, the corporate side of things that says, well, you got to chop up the game into multiple parts. And then, then that was the part of the leading the decision to say, well, okay, Midgar has to be the whole first game. But
Right.
maybe it is actually some of both. It's maybe some of the corporate side and also Katase saying, I want to make a Midgar that felt like the old one, and in order to do that, it has to feel huge. You know what I mean? That's kind of what I may be reading into it a little too much, but that's kind of what it sounded like he was saying to me.
Well, I mean, to me, that sounds very accurate. Hold on one second. There we go. Okay, to me, that sounds kind of the way I took it too. I mean, I think that, like, really, I don't know if it's, to me, what I got from it was that in his mind, it was just impactful, right? So, like, when he thinks back to the game, he thinks back to the Midgar portion and the story sequences that happened there as being much larger, um, just because of the way it resonated with him, even being the director of the game, and how much story content is pulled from there in Crisis Core, and then the other compilation media. And so in his mind, because this was such a big part of the game, we have like the dress up scene, we have basically the death of President Shinra, all these big things. We meet many members of our party there. I mean, a lot of events kind of start here that propel the whole game, but it's just a lot of big moments in that part of the game. And I think that just having that amount of stuff in your mind when you think about Final Fantasy VII, right? Usually I'm not thinking about like the Bone Village, or
Yeah.
going through the Sleeping Forest when I'm thinking about Final Fantasy VII. Usually I'm thinking about the Midgar portion, right? So, I mean, I think from that perspective, he's looking at it like, wow, this was only 6 hours. It was very impactful. It was only 6 hours. So I think that with the remake, he's looking at it like, okay, when people go back to replay this, I want this to be as big as they remember it, meaning from his own perspective also, right? That
Hmm.
because this was so impactful, I was surprised that it was only 6 hours. Since we're remaking this, it would be a little anticlimactic for a AAA remake if the Midgar portion was again only 6 hours. I mean, he thinks that maybe people might be like, well, why didn't we get to see this huge city? Why didn't we get to see all these areas? This was a chance to kind of delve into Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge. Like, this is a AAA remake. Why didn't we get to see more of that? And like, so I can kind of see where he's coming from. That like they just wanted to make it bigger. You know,
Mm.
um, I don't know if it needed to be 40 hours big. You know,
That's what we're getting. So
so, but I can kind of get where he's coming from.
I think that's the number one question there is, did Midgard need to be bigger? Is because what we got, one of the key things that we got from Midgar was that there's an upper class of people who like live pretty decent to good lives. Then you got people from the slums who are, the low class men that are oppressed by Shinra. And, we get all the ideas of what kind of antagonists we're coming up against. And I think Midgar in the original 7 did everything already to present to the player the stakes and what type of place Midgar is already. I don't think you had to explore every sector to get that idea.
no,
Like,
you
we
don't.
got a pretty good idea of how the slums are, like with like the wall market and uh, the Sector 7, with a Tifo's bar and all the other cruddy looking places. And then we see what the high life is for a little bit when we're doing like the bombing missions and infiltrating Shinra. I'm not saying you can't expand upon it, and I'm actually curious to see how they expand upon it. But I guess we'll find out if we did truly need Midgar expanded or not.
Yeah. I mean, look,
Mhm.
I don't fault them for the multiple games, especially now that I'm replaying Final Fantasy VII, and there's a lot of stuff in there. I mean, like you can get through the game if you've played it before, like fairly quickly. I definitely am, but there's still a lot of stuff in there to kind of that has the opportunity for you to really just kind of expand upon. So I don't blame them for doing multiple games, but but at the same time I see like why Katase would want to do strictly a game on Midgar if he's trying to make it as big and as important as it is in his memory. But I agree with you, Eric. Like, I don't know, man. I think that like they could have spent more time in there and maybe made it 2 games, but maybe it could have been 12 hours, instead of 6 or something like that. But this is interesting stuff. Should we move on to the next one here?
Sure. The next one's kind of a 2-part quote from Toriyama and Nojima.
Yeah, so I had something that I wanted to bring up in between those, though. So Toriyama is saying the main character in the game is Cloud Strife, and as far as his character and personality goes, Cloud has often appeared in a number of other games since Final Fantasy VII, and people have a strong image of him from those as a very cool and collected character, the complete and flawless hero. So this is Toriyama talking here, and this to me is one example of a Square developer saying things that fans have been saying for years, right? And it was a major concern of mine that they would be getting Cloud's character incorrect, initially when this game was first announced, because prior to this remake, with Square's appearances of Cloud in other types of media, with Advent Children and Kingdom Hearts, like he was a much different Cloud than he was in the actual game, right? And so it seems to me like this is kind of refreshing that we see a Square developer talking about Cloud in the way that we as fans have talked about Cloud from the original game. Like this sounds like the original PlayStation 1 Cloud. Like he's a little insecure. He's not quite sure of himself. He has a lot of like inner turmoil about his identity. He clings to Soldier's like badass identity as like a safety net. And like through the game, not everyone's buying it. Like Barrett doesn't buy it. Tifa has her doubts. Like you even have like Sid, who at one point in the game, after Cloud leaves the party, says, "I didn't trust that shifty SOB anyways," or better off. So like not everyone in the party's buying it. And I'm just glad that, like Square is, at least right here, we have Toriyama kind of like understanding the difference, right? And I think just like Stan, you were going to point out, Nojima kind of like tacks on to that when he says about Cloud, he used to be part of a special military unit. And since he was a child, he has had a strong need to be accepted by people. He felt that he was special, but as a child had nothing to prove that. So he wanted to make something of himself and choose the path of joining Soldier. So, I mean, like it seems to me like they're approaching Cloud correctly. And of all the things I think they would have gotten wrong when I'm thinking about when this game was first announced, this was like one of the easiest things I thought they were going to mess up. I thought it was just going to be Advent Children Cloud. He was just going to be like whiny and depressed. And, it was just going to be him Google-eyed about Aerith the whole game. Like, and like all you would ever see is like Cloud and Sephiroth doing like sword battles across skyscrapers while like Cloud like cries in a corner. I mean, like, so it seems to me like they're approaching this correctly.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to sound strange to say this, but like reading that quote like makes me hype for the game, because that's like one of my biggest I guess you would say worries, like you were saying, like they won't get the characters right because it's been so long since the original game came out. And also you have, very strong creative voices like Sakaguchi, right, who is not involved in the remake. And so you just don't know if they can pull it off, when all the pieces are not there, when all the creative minds are not behind this project. But hearing that coming from Toriyama, Toriyama saying like, well, some people understand him from how he is in the other games. And then Nojima just kind of reiterating like what his character is actually like from the original and saying like, that's how it's going to be in this game. That's like very encouraging, I would say.
Yeah, for sure.
It is good to hear because I mean, I really like Cloud as a character so much for so many reasons. It's so interesting to see, like such a like it says in the quotes, like Cloud has such a perfect front to him that like he's a badass, wields a big sword, can take on anyone. Used to be part of Soldier, all that kind of cool stuff, and he's so iconic, and you want to be like him. And then you find out you actually relate to him more after
Yes.
you find out that most of it was a front. I mean, of course, he's a fantastic fighter. A lot of it's due to the Mako stuff that was injected into him, but like overall, at the end of the day, he was in his eyes a failure as a person, and created this like psychological like mental gymnastics inside his head to make himself believe of what he was, because he's so like afraid of just like not being accepted or being looked up upon instead of down upon. And that was such a great complicated character, and I absolutely loved everything about it. And then when all that's resolved and Cloud accepts who he is, then we get this weird interpretation of him, which I usually like to call Nomura Cloud, because the character feels a lot different than he did in the original game, like even in the Kingdom Hearts games, as he mentioned. It's like, it doesn't feel like they're the same character in a lot of ways. It's like he's always depressed about something, or, you know, or something like that. It just always felt off. I mean, he looked cool and everything, but that's like the most you could really say about it. So like you said, I'm glad that they're, you know, going back to and studying why these characters are as great as they were. So I am glad they are. I agree with you. I'm glad they're taking that into account.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird too with the other interpretations, not to drag this out, but I mean, like the whole lesson of 7 was once he believed in himself, he was strong enough to take on Sephiroth. But because he did not believe in himself, that's how Sephiroth was able to manipulate him, right? So by the end of the game, he believes in himself and he defeats Sephiroth, and then he has closure about Aerith, and like everything's good. And then like all the other games, he's just like very upset about something. And I'm like, dude, you were like a better person at the beginning of Final Fantasy 7 or like at parts of 7 than you are now. Like what happened, man? Like, is everything okay? You know? But
well, that's what bugged me about Evan Children was it's like, wait, why are we dealing with this problem again? We just went over this in the game that comes before this.
Yeah.
The Cloud needs something new to have a problem with, not go back to the same thing.
Yeah, I think Cloud's grief in Advent Children would have made sense, or would have made more sense if if that story took place like a couple months after the end of Final Fantasy VII, you know? But actually it's like a couple years, like 2 or 3 years, I believe. And so then it just feels off, like, because his, you know, everything was resolved, right? So if he, like, it makes sense, like maybe a couple months he would still be kind of feeling some, you know, anguish over the fact that Aerith died, you know, to save the planet, you know, and he'd be kind of blaming himself still a little bit. But 2 years later, that's like very extreme. That is very out of character compared to what we get in the original game.
Yeah.
He has a cool sword, though.
Oh, yeah. That makes up for it a little bit, right? Like a little bit.
Yeah,
I think so.
They have motorcycle fights, and they fight up in the air. And if you
have 3 Sephiroths.
if you want the most dangerous drinking game in the world out there, you take a shot every time a character jumps in that movie.
That's a lot of shots. I don't think I want to do that.
ABC store is going to be rich tonight.
Yeah. So we have another quote here. Let's see. So Nojima, he's saying, again, discussing Cloud, it says, there's something that I want to tell people, but I'm also a little nervous about saying. For this game, I have gone much deeper into the inner psychology of Cloud, the main character, In the original, I depicted him as a cool and stylish character. However, this time, he can miss the mark and be a little cringeworthy at times. His cool facade can often slip because he wants people to accept him and respect him. He puts on a front. So, and this is kind of what we're talking about here, but he says, so when he doesn't know something, he just goes, not interested. I have written him in a way that makes you think that not interested might not be a cool thing to say, but can sometimes be a bit lame. That's something I really want to convey. That is a personal challenge I set myself, but at the same time, I am nervous about whether the fans will accept that or not.
Didn't he kind of already do that in the original 7? Because I know I think there's certain points in the game where they create a juxtaposition for him.
Yeah, that's how I felt about him. So I'm not sure who he's talking about when he says whether fans will accept that or not, because I think the 3 fans right here are like, yes, that's Cloud. Thank you.
I think he's speaking to like the Advent Children fans.
Yeah, the newer fans, the fans who got introduced to him in Advent Children or Kingdom Hearts and stuff like that.
He's kind of speaking like, oh, we're going to do something pretty crazy this time, and we're actually going to do the kind of character that Cloud was before we did a lot of changes to him. I don't know how the fans are going to feel about this.
What if it's like, thanks. That's exactly what we want, actually.
What if it's something crazy, though? What if it's like Cloud has a stutter?
Oh, well.
Like, and he just can't get over it until the end of the game, like, or something crazy like that. Like, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I think it's cool that they're further emphasizing this in great detail, right? Like that commitment to showing this front that he's talking about with Cloud. So I'm all about it. I think it would have been like a change to the story, right? If they tried to portray Cloud essentially the same as Zack from Crisis Core, if they tried to go that route, and like, because like Cloud isn't Zack, he's just imitating him, so I'm glad that they're not going to the action hero, they're trying to make a more dynamic and interesting character. So I think that's positive. But I'm with you. I don't know what he means. I mean, I feel like you kind of already had that, but
yeah, like I was, replaying the game recently, and there's a point where like Yuffie was in my party and she calls Cloud a dork, like just straight up, like, you dork, So it's like, yeah, he was supposed to be cringy at times in the original game,
And like, you're a freaking ninja in modern times. Get out of here. You're a dork. All right. Then we have Nojima and Toriyama, and again, they're all these are all people that worked on the original game. Nojima, like, big time writer for the Final Fantasy series, writing like the dialogue and stuff like that, right? And Toriyama, obviously, besides directing Final Fantasy 13, which is what a lot of people what a lot of people will know him from, but he also did a lot of the portions in the Final Fantasy 7. Like, he designed the whole wall market scenarios, which seems right down his alley of kind of like this really off the wall craziness, right? So,
yep.
But anyways, Nojima and Toriyama then go on to start talking about Tifa here, and they say this is the heroine of the game, a woman called Tifa. Her home was destroyed and her father killed, and since then she has lived for revenge, but she is torn over how to take that revenge. She's a bit unsure if she could be taking that path. She's kind of unsure whether such violent actions are a good thing or not. So she is slightly torn when the story begins. That changes a bit when her childhood friend Cloud appears. I mean, to me, this is interesting because, in the game, we see Tifa latching on to Cloud kind of as that reassurance, right? That what they're doing is the right thing, primarily because Tifa and Cloud grew up together. So this, again, is another example of them drawing on the character's past and using that to flesh out the character in a way to support the payoff of when we actually see, Tifa's whole character arc, right? So I'm glad to keep hearing them talking about these characters' past and how that defines them presently in the game, instead of just being like, Tifa's got big boobs and she punches stuff, or Cloud's got a big sword and he was in the military. They're actually talking about these characters' past and the effect it has on the story. So, I mean, again, this is just another example of them, I think, approaching this correctly.
Sounds like a bunch of dilly dally shilly shally to me.
Yeah. Then we have Toriyama talking about Barrett. He says he's a very dynamic person and is always aggressively pushing forward. As a leader, he feels he must lead from the front and pull everyone along with him, but he is more the impetus type who gets heated up and can be led by his emotions. So the people around him wind up desperately supporting him. Stan, I think you had something you wanted to bring up here.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty accurate description of kind of the Barrett that we saw in the demo so far, right? With the whole, easily gets riled up with his emotions, which is, I hope that that's really like always in regard to, the Shinra, right? Since that ties in heavily to his past, you know. I don't want to see him like all bombastic all the time.
Well, that's exactly how I felt with him. Is that like he needs to breathe.
Yeah,
for a few minutes. It's like he can have calm moments. Like even in the elevator, he has to overexert himself. I understand he's in the heat of the moment, but the elevator scene is supposed to be the moment for the characters to breathe before they go to the next part of the mission. And this is the point where he should be more calm and waiting. Maybe he'll get a little impatient, but like this is the point like where he just like calmly talks to Cloud about everything, and then maybe he'll get mad at the end about something, but like he's still over the top all the time. And I really hope this is not something that happens throughout the entire game. Like I hope that like he has a moment to just calm down and just like breathe for a few minutes. That's all I ask from that character.
Yeah, I think you guys are right. I mean, I think that as long as the anger is primarily drawn at Shinra, right, and Barrett's not just losing his mind all the time for no reason, or he's just like, thrown off as like a loose cannon. If somebody bumps into him in the alleyway, he starts, getting all like mad and stuff. Like it's going to seem a little off, right? But as long as the anger is directed at Shinra, I think that's going to, as long as it makes sense. Me and Stan had a slight different viewpoint on the elevator scene. I was more on Eric's side when we were talking about it on that one. But as long as it makes sense to his story, I think it's going to work. I mean, because as we know, I mean, Shinra took everything from him. Shinra destroyed his entire town and everyone he cared about. And then later, Barrett has to live through that again with the plate dropping. So it just makes sense that he would have a tremendous amount of rage, and he almost is just equally mad at himself for making what he sees as such a stupid decision. So I think as long as they're taking the anger through that lens, I think it's going to work really well. But, portraying him as just angry in general, I think he's just angry.
It's just going to be one note.
Yeah, that's definitely I was going to say that's definitely a fear, going into the game and only having seen what we've seen so far, because it's a very anime writing thing, I guess, to have a character and assign them a thing, a personality trait. Like this character's gets really angry all the time at the push of a button, or this character is always infatuated with the main character or whatever, and that's their thing. And so in every scene, that's how their interactions play out. Yeah. So hopefully we'll get a little bit more of a, three-dimensional characters, because, that's how they are in the original. There's a little bit more depth to them. They're not, they're not amazingly, they're not Game of Thrones characters, right? But they do have a little more depth to them than a typical anime character that you would kind of see these days. But the way I saw Barrett is kind of like he is like kind of that anger is kind of like underneath him, right? And then he's like, as they were going through the mission, he was calm, but as he got further down the reactor, he started getting more and more and more like amped up and agitated, right? Because they're getting closer to the objective, right? And then, you know, he's in the elevator and he's trying to kind of guilt trip Cloud to like be on his side and like feel the same way as him. But Cloud wasn't having it, and that just made him push even further. You know,
I can see the way you're approaching that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then on the scene later when they go back up the elevator, he's kind of still like amped up. But then, right, you have that moment where he looks back at Cloud, and then he's like able to kind of, like, you know,
calm
like
down.
put that back in the bottle for now, right?
Yeah.
You know, now's not the time to be angry. Like, look at Cloud here, and that's because after the Scorpion, you know, he kind of he respects Cloud all of a sudden, right after the Scorpion boss fight.
Right.
So he's able to kind of like, okay, you know, maybe I got to keep it together.
Yeah, I can see how you approach that with the remake and kind of, you know, see the way they're portraying that character. I guess to me, like when we first meet Barrett, like he's kind of like the obviously the leader of the party, but he's also like that glue that's keeping everyone together. I like I get the sense that he tries really hard to appear calm and collect, but he's under so much pressure that sometimes it just like it bursts, right? But most of the time he's able to like hold it in. And you kind of see that with like the original elevator scene in the original game. Like, you know, Barrett says something like, Cloud, don't you care? The planet's dying. And Cloud says, I don't care, or something like that, right? And Barrett turns around and you see his body shaking and he's kind of like throwing his fist at the wall a little bit. And then he just slowly drops his arm and he like goes back to normal. And he's like, we'll be there soon. Like he's able to like keep it together, right? But obviously once you see the plate drop, he realizes like all these people are dead. He starts firing off his gun. Like he's losing his mind. He's freaking pissed. You know, it's just like there's moments where it makes sense. But I can see where you're coming from, that he's just trying to get like real riled up. And like, as he gets closer, he's trying to like get his adrenaline going and get focused for the mission too. So it could be approaching that from a different angle.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough thing because like you're saying, when you saw the character in as he was in FF7 and he kind of shakes his fist, you saw that as like he was getting really amped up, but then he was like able to like dial it back right there in that moment, right?
Right.
But when I saw that, I was like, oh, this guy's pissed. And then I read the rest of the dialogue as if he was like sticking it to Cloud, you know? So it's kind of like an interpretive thing going on, I think.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things with this remake is when in a previous podcast we said that we were reading another quote from Nojima where he said there will be much less room for player interpretation, you know? So we're already kind of seeing that because like he has to pick one idea of several that could have been conveyed by those very simple gestures that the characters could make, you know? Because then he has to write the dialogue now in a way that is voiced, right? And the actor can't portray like a vague emotion, right? That could be interpreted different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. That's very difficult, you know. But you know, he kind of has to pick one of those paths and take the characters down the path that he thinks most people remember the character as, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I guess like he still seems like they're taking a different path a little bit though, because like even in the demo, which isn't a bad thing, I ended up liking the character, but he was much more talkative than I viewed Barrett as. Barrett had always seemed like the no small talk type character. Like if you're in a car with him riding on a long road trip, like he wouldn't say anything. Like he would just sit there and drive. Like there would be no small talk or anything. Like, and like he always seemed like he only had like a couple of one word answers or 2 word answers. You know, like when are we getting our pay? Don't ask. You know, like
right.
Like he's not going in depth. He's very concise with his speech, and unless he bursts out of emotions. So like seeing this Barrett going on this like soapbox rant and then him joking with Cloud throughout the whole reactor and constantly calling him a dog. And like, I was just like, this seems a different take.
Yeah. It's
But
not what you remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but I still ended up liking the character by the end. So, we'll see. Then we have, I think the next one here is Nojima saying, when Square Enix told me we were doing the Final Fantasy VII Remake, I first asked, how much could we alter the dialogue? Because the dialogue in the original game was designed to be read by the player. It was not voiced. I said that if the dialogue was going to be performed by actors, then I'd like to change it. And I think this is kind of, again, what you were talking about earlier. But he said I wanted to change it all because we now have these super realistic characters and performances. I've gone back and written in all the bits that were omitted because we didn't feel we needed to go into that depth with the original simpler characters. I think
that's a given. I think you kind of have to do that to make it sound natural with the dialogue. I think as long as you just successfully convey the scene like it did in the original, then changing the dialogue, I think, is fine as long as you don't contradict yourself in there.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting quote. I think you're right, Eric. Like, it's kind of a given. But what I found was kind of more interesting about it was that he said he went back and written in all the bits that were omitted. And I'm reading that like, okay, I highly doubt he remembers all the pieces of dialogue that were omitted from 23 years ago and just decided to put it back in. Like, unless like he found some like original draft or something, I'm thinking that he just tried to rewrite the dialogue for voice dialogue to make it make more sense. Like, let's not have Barrett say press X. Like, let's not have someone explain the menu system. Let's just have that be its own explanation, right? Or
and they have that data, the omitted stuff, because last I remember, they threw away stuff after they finished the game. That's why it took so long to get remasters for some games. So they deleted a ton of stuff, but they kept omitted dialogue.
Yeah,
I guess so. Yeah, I do remember hearing before that there is some,
story ideas,
script and ideas that are still on the disc, like actually got printed onto the disc and shipped. Well, they're just locked away. Like,
that's
the
where
triggers that would,
those beholders or whatever, the ghosts, right?
Oh,
those were supposed to be originally in the game, and they brought that back. So I guess it's possible there's some stuff sitting around somewhere, like original concept art and stuff like that. But to think like there's like an old draft that he really liked of the entire game, because especially since they were like writing the story as they went. Sometimes they talked about that, like being in like the break room in a different interview and like 3/4 of the way through the game or whatever. They're like, what should we do next? Or, and they'd be debating it in the break room. Just, it's like, I don't know, Najima, I think you're getting ahead of yourself. I mean, kind of cool.
Yeah.
Toriyama added to this, in terms of the character dialogue and conversations, naturally we're keeping all the iconic moments from the original script, but because the original was all text-based with no facial expressions and quite bare camera work, if we left the dialogue unchanged, it would sound very explanatory and not up to the same quality as modern games. So we have edited and reworked it to sound more like natural conversation, but very much kept it having the same impression on the player. To me, this sounds more like I've seen before, like tutorial type stuff. But also, I think that they're talking about stuff where, and I actually saw a little clip of this scene, but you remember in the original where Jesse's explaining to Cloud the layout of Midgar's city, right, on the train. And she's like, look here, and like, this is the different sectors, and it's, so many plates and everything like that. And there's actually some footage in the remake of them like doing that same scene. But I suspect that he's talking about this type of dialogue where they probably rewrote it to be more conversational and have it make sense. Because why would Jesse be explaining to Cloud how many plates or how many sectors are in Midgar?
Right.
He worked for Shinra. And I'm sure he knows, right? Like, So it's just, so I'm sure there's stuff like that where it kind of makes sense for you, the player, to be told this in the game, and you're reading text, so it kind of reads like a tutorial, and you like mentally you just understand like Jesse's not actually saying that, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
But because it's
that is
dialogue, spoken dialogue, they can't just leave that without it being weird.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'll have to keep an eye out for that scene when we play it and see how different it is from the original to the new version, and see if it flows a little bit more naturally now that they have this in mind.
Yeah.
I think you brought up another point, like on a previous episode, when in the demo when they're going down, Cloud and Barrett have a little conversation where Barrett is saying like, oh, like he's looking at the Mako down below, and he says, if we fell down, would we go down to the planet's core? And Cloud just says, no, the pump would suck you back up.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like a natural conversation-y way of like explaining some kind of world building in there, right?
Without being so direct.
If it was like just like exploratory, like he said, like Cloud would just be like explaining in some form of exposition about it instead of just being having a remark back.
Yeah, he'd be like, I don't know, like, you see, Barrett, that's a Mako pump, and that's what pulls the Mako.
And it's like, why? Like Barrett designed this mission. Clearly, he knows this.
Yeah, but they wrote it. They wrote it in such a way that it can still be explained to the player during like Cloud and Barrett's kind of uneasy, like little back and forth.
Yeah.
So that's good. If they are able to do that in clever ways, that will be a good addition, I think.
Yeah. Then Toriyama continues and says, what I would say was the most difficult and was recreating those sections in the original where he had just a black screen with just text over it that showed Cloud's internal monologue. There are various issues with that technique once you use voice dialogue, such as you might not know whose inner voice it is, or some of the secrets we need to hide are given away too easily. So excuse me, I'm sorry, I was having a hiccup. So we tried hard to find a new way of depicting that in a way that kept it mysterious like it was originally. This is an interesting problem, and I can see what they're talking about, right? Because there's been a lot of debate among fans in the original, like when Cloud has those like, mental spasms, right? And he like goes down on one knee and there's some words on the screen. There's people arguing who's speaking at the Cloud. I mean, is it Genova? Is it Sephiroth? Is it just Cloud's own mind trying to like snap back to reality? Right. So like, I can see why that would be a problem, because if you're trying to hide the fact that it's, Sephiroth or Genova, or if you just want there to be that mystery, like maybe it's Cloud, like if you just have somebody narrating it, like you're going to be able to tell like immediately. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting problem to have, but it's kind of like shooting yourself in the foot also when they're so forward with Sephiroth in the remake, right? Kind of writing him in a bigger way in Midgar, because they're going to have to spill the beans then to some degree, right? So I'm like kind of interested to see how this plays out. How do they do those scenes now and still keep that mystery, but also keep it mysterious with Cloud's connection to Sephiroth, with Sephiroth like taunting Cloud, right?
I think they'll use more imagery than dialogue now.
Yeah.
Like maybe instead of just like Zack simply calling out to him, like you see like a vision of Cloud looking around in the truck, and like he can't really see well. It's like blurry, and you kind of see like a blur of Zack talking to him or something like that. Then he can be like, "What? Where you go?"
Yeah, I think that's what you have to do. Something like that. Maybe like, well, I don't know. Yeah, more imagery. Like if he kind of has like a flashback to Nibelheim, but then because in the original game it was vague, like you said, what voice it is, and the game actually never really confirms it. I always took it as it was Cloud's former self, right? His self that he's repressed,
Right.
you know. But you can interpret it as like Genova or Sephiroth or even Zack, So
I think that I'm just taking a guess here, but I think the game's going to reimagine that as Sephiroth.
I don't know if I would like that.
Well, because you see the one scene and then you see a couple scenes in the trailers, right, where Cloud's like Sephiroth speaking to Cloud, and he's like making him doubt himself, like like you can't save anyone, you can't, like and then Cloud throws his sword at him, and then like all of a sudden Sephiroth's not there, right? And like the inner dialogue that Cloud had in the original was generally not very positive, right? It wasn't like, you got this, keep trying. It was usually like kind of like it made him doubt himself. It wasn't like super negative, but it wasn't optimistic either, right? It would always be like something's wrong, something like that, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll have to see what they do. Toriyama says many staff replayed the original game to familiarize themselves for Final Fantasy VII Remake, but as I was involved in developing the original, rather than playing through the game again, I tried to remember and recreate the feelings I had back when I was working on and making the original. So my preparations prior to starting this project were mainly about rediscovering that mindset. I hate this quote. Like, I'm sorry, if Katase, the man who directed the game, has time to replay the game, right? And then Nomura, who also worked on the game, right, like was able to watch complete playthroughs online and listen to people's commentary, and then like all the staff that are working for you are replaying the game. Come on, man. It's been 23 years. Go play the damn game.
It's not that long, right?
I would probably be watching multiple YouTube videos by multiple people, like just saying like what made FF7 so special. I'm like, oh yes, write this down. Let's see. No one liked AC Cloud, make OG Cloud like OG Cloud.
Just circle that 3 times, right?
Yeah.
It is kind of a
weird thing to
puzzling,
say,
right? Yeah, and they're all taking their different ways of remembering the game. Like Toriyama just wants to put himself in the mindset of how he was back then. However you do that, whatever,
Yeah, but he's
23.
He's 23 years older.
Yeah,
it's kind of like he's a different person. And like,
and then
his mindset back then was like designing the wall market, which was pretty perverted.
Yeah,
maybe you shouldn't do that. I actually like that portion of the game, but I mean, I'm just saying, you don't want to make the whole game like that. Like, you're in a different role now.
Yeah. But then like the previous quote that we just read was also from him when he was talking about specific, like a very specific issue, right? Like the black screen with just text, and like how that can be interpreted as different voices in Cloud's head, and like how to deal with that. So it's kind of like, well, he's very clearly reviewed some kind of video or the script or something, even if he hasn't played the game. So
this is why I wonder if maybe there's been, well, I'm sure there has been lots and lots of meetings where they're discussing a lot of these issues, and he's just kind of been there, like picking a lot of these issues up by osmosis. Because
maybe
a lot of the stuff that he's brought up here, I've heard Nomura say similar stuff like a year ago, right? With like the, Cloud's a different kind of goofy, not the same type of, and stuff like that, which maybe Nomura got that from Toriyama, maybe they got that from Katase, or, who knows? But I just wonder if, through this process and people bringing up problems and him being one of the directors, right, of this game, that maybe, he's just naturally going to be exposed to a lot of these issues other people are bringing up. I wonder.
That could be, yeah.
So, then this is the last quote here, but we have Katase, who says, the experience that we wanted players of Final Fantasy VII Remake to have was for players who did not know or play the original to experience the surprises of the Final Fantasy VII story in the same way that the original generation of players did 23 years ago. So I would like for everyone to really immerse themselves in these characters through the story, performance, and more expressive, realistic graphics, to get inside that character's head and enjoy the world of Midgar and their battles against the Shinra Corporation. And then another quote here, for people who do not know the original, you may be asking if Final Fantasy VII Remake just follows the story of the original. Well, that wouldn't be a bad thing. Of course, all the memorable elements and key moments from the original have been faithfully reproduced, and you can enjoy experiencing those again. But on the other hand, there are also the new things and surprises that were not in the original and things that people really wanted us to show. Players and fans of the original can enjoy the remake on many levels, both reliving the old stuff and rediscovering the new.
Please be excited.
Please be excited. Yeah, he should have just ended with that. I mean, dude, I think like for me, like with this like final quote here though, like at least in the video also, you can kind of see a little like excitement in Katase's eyes, right? And his approach to being a producer, which he's been a producer now for a long time, compared to when he was a director, was that he was very hands off with his producing role, right? He kind of tried to get out of the space of the development team. The director, he tried to provide support, but he wouldn't go like full hands-on like Sakaguchi would, where as like, for example, with Final Fantasy IX, Hiroki Ito directed Final Fantasy IX, but Hiroki Ito often says that Sakaguchi was the real director of IX. Like that Sakaguchi was on the floor every day working with people. Like he was like, this was his baby. And you kind of saw Sakaguchi in a similar way with 7 and 6 and you know, games that he didn't direct, but he produced. So I kind of wonder if Katase, when he became a producer, if he thought like, well, I'm going to try to like, maybe that was kind of annoying. Like I'm going to try to let them have their own creative vision, but I much prefer the director Katase to the producer Katase, because director Katase, I mean, we got Final Fantasy 6, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8, Final Fantasy 10. I mean, he was also executive producer, but he was a director on that. I mean, the guy was a good director. So, and we're seeing stuff that is saying that, or at least Katase is saying that he's directing like the Shinra Tower scenarios, for example, like, you know, when you're leaving Midgar, the Shinra Tower, like all the floors and everything like that, and different aspects of that, which I'm sure is much larger. So, I mean, it seems like he's taken a more hands-on approach with this, which I would understand. He directed the game originally, so he's like, it was his idea to start this. So I'm excited for that reason alone, that Katase's kind of having a midlife crisis here and just like, you know, going back to the floor here and trying to, you know, one last hurrah with like actually putting a hands-on approach to this game. I mean, I think that's very, very encouraging for me.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and you guys got any other last little tidbits you want to bring up with this before we move on to the Nintendo Direct?
Game comes out in 2 weeks. Please look forward to it.
Yeah.
My game,
We're getting close now.
My game on my Amazon window, because I pre-ordered it like June last year, right? The special edition or whatever. So the little status or bar of like to ship, right? It's gone all the way from ordered to like, there's like a little like couple of centimeters between where the bar is and shipped. And I keep checking it every day. I know they wouldn't ship it now, but apparently some people have already gotten the game. So I keep hoping it's going to ship, because, you know, we talked in a prior podcast that they said there might be some delays. So I just want to see that shipped sign so I can just have that warm, satisfying, you know, feeling. Or
that other way around, they may come early.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Square Enix has been releasing like a little like statement every other day about this stuff. And they did say they shipped it much earlier to Australian territories
And Europe as well, I heard.
Europe
Yeah.
also, and they said they're shipping it much earlier. So they said they're hoping that either it will get there on time or actually earlier. So some people may be playing the game a couple days before. To some people who might get angry over that, just understand the situation right now, and just be glad that people are getting copies instead of not getting any. So, just hope you get two, of course. But
I think I remember with Final Fantasy 15, right? Like the game, somehow some people got it a few days early, and there's a lot of people like posting like the entire ending to the game on YouTube, and people were freaking out and not watching YouTube because they didn't want to accidentally see the thumbnail, and so I'm sure we're gonna have that stuff again. So
yeah, it is what it is as far as the shipping goes. So
yeah. I mean, if there's a major game that comes out that you always look forward to, I mean, good suggestion is in the first place, don't go on the internet until you get it. I mean, that's just a given rule. If you venture into this websites normally, you're kind of opening yourself for it. So just be careful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I saw there was a video from Spawnwave, right? The YouTuber, and the video title was Final Fantasy 7 Remake Leaks, right? And then if you click on the video, he was going over some of the leaks. And in the comments, the first comment I saw when I scrolled down was, "Hello, spoiler warning, geez." It's like the video says like leaks. I mean, like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. So yeah, just be wary. All right, let's get to this Nintendo Direct here. So, we had a indie Direct, I think last week or the week before. Some kind of cool stuff in there, but we've been kind of without a Nintendo Direct for a long time. And so a lot of people were just getting real antsy for like an actual Direct, right? Not just an indie Direct. And so Nintendo uploaded a mini Direct, even though this one was 30 minutes. This was a mini Direct. And I think it was mini because there wasn't any like huge Nintendo announcements, but there was a lot of pretty decent announcements, and also games that we already knew were coming that we got more information on. So we're going to kind of go through these. We have some thoughts on certain games, and other ones we're just kind of real quickly go through. But I think the first one,
Xenoblade.
What's that?
It's going to be mostly
Xenoblade and Bravely Default too.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's just get into it with the Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition. This was announced, I think, like was it E3 last year, or was it? I think it was shortly after E3, and we saw that first trailer of it. And the first thing that was apparent was that this was literally a remake, right? This isn't just a port. This isn't a remaster. They're literally remaking the game. Redoing a lot of the soundtrack, the graphics, and then also going back and expanding the areas, which is crazy because, dude, I played the original for the first time, I think 2 years ago. We reviewed it on this channel, and or discussed it anyways. And dude, I put 100 hours into that game, and I still felt like there was stuff I could have kept doing. I loved it, but it was obnoxiously long. So the fact
it's long, yeah.
The fact that they're like adding more stuff into it, and from what I understand, tying it in a little bit with other games is astounding to me. That's just astounding. I mean, the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was so successful. Torna Country was very successful. So we all expected this game to come to the Switch, the first one. But like doing this much stuff with it is just very, very surprising to me. But we got a release date for it, May 29th, 2020. So that's really exciting. I watched I watched the trailer, and guys, I've come to my conclusions on this new style. Okay, because when I watched the trailer, I cannot deny that many of the scenes look much better. They look
Mm-hmm.
much better than the original game. I mean, I played the original game in 1080p because I emulated it, and that looks pretty damn good. But it does look much better. And I'm going to bring up some examples here just to kind of like bring that home. But there is a little nitpick I have where I don't think this one design choice looks better, and I'm going to bring that up. But I want to point out some of the stuff that does look better here first, right? So I've got this comparison video from Profile 404-GPRS. Oh, that's the name of the YouTube channel. But I'm going to pull this up. That's a weird YouTube channel. I wonder how he says that. Hey, I'm Profile 404-GPRS. I don't know. Anyways, so here's the video here. So I got it paused at 8 seconds. Now, this is an example of what I think looks really good. On the left, you have the old one. On the right, you have the new one. And Jesus Christ, like, look at the lighting on the stone. Look how detailed the stonework is. Like, you have this kind of like haze around the stone because from like rock, like a giant colossus is like grinding rocks together, boulders together, mountains together. Really, like, you're going to have a lot of excess debris. Like, I think that just looks, really good. So I can't see anyone looking at that and saying like that doesn't look, better, because clearly it does, right?
It does.
Then if you go to 53 seconds, you're going to see another example here with the difference between on the right, the old ship, flying here, and then the new. And I'm going to press play here, but like the left hand side is so much more colorful. It's much more sharp. I mean, it's just, I think it looks a lot better than it did before. So I think like a lot of the environments, even some of the characters look a lot better. But I think, well, here, we'll give one more example here. At 107, you see how do you say that? Laboratory. Can't speak today, guys. Laboratory. And you see the Monado sitting on kind of like a rack. And on the left, you see the old graphics. On the right, you see the new graphics. And on the left, it looks good. It looks really sharp, but it definitely looks dated because you can kind of tell the reflections are just kind of drawn on, right? It's not like it's actual lighting. It looks like it's just kind of drawn that way to be reflective and look metal, but it doesn't actually look as good as compared to the right, where we're seeing actual reflections on the metal, actual lighting effects. I mean, it just looks, it's undeniable. It looks better on the right with the updated graphics. Now, where I will say that I think that this is preference, but I don't think it looks as good, is I'm going to go to 143 here, and I have it paused on 143, and you'll see it kind of has a slice down the middle of Shulk's face, right?
What
And
time did you say?
1 minute and 43 seconds.
Okay.
So it's at 1 minute and 43, and I have it paused, and it's got a slice down Shulk's face here. So you have the old on the left and a new on the right. Now, I think the colors like look really good on the right. The new one, like, it looks very bright. I like that. But I think, and this is the only character I have this opinion on. The other ones I think look fine. But I think they made him look younger. And I can point this out here on the left-hand side, the old one, look how far his face extends compared to on the right with the newer one. Look how far his face extends, right? So the older one only goes out about 60% to the left compared to the newer one. And then if you look at the bottom, the chin actually ends shorter, right? So they made his face more round, and then they made it smaller, which when I look at that, I see that as baby fat, right? Whereas when you go through puberty, your face gets a little bit longer. You have higher cheekbones, and you can kind of see that on the left-hand side. I don't know if on the right hand, hold on, let me get this on the screen here. I didn't realize it froze. God damn it. There we go. So hold on. Let me bring that up with the Monado again, just so I can bring that up because that froze. Okay, so on the left-hand side, we have, this kind of metal surface that's kind of drawn on. On the right-hand side, it's very reflective. That's what I was bringing up there. So now I'm going to go to 143. And we have the face here.
If you go to 146, there's one with his eyes open.
All right, well, I have a pause right here. I want to mess it up here. I can go there too. We have the face. It's very much extended on the right-hand side. You can actually see how far out it comes compared to the left-hand side where it's the old model. And that's simply because they made the face, the chin ends earlier and then it's wider. So it's more round. And then on the left-hand side, you see some shadow work under his cheekbone, which really kind of defines that cheekbone and like gives it that look like there's no baby fat there. It's kind of a higher cheekbone. And then under the eye ridge here, you see some shadowing under the eyebrow, which again, when you go through puberty, the bones on your skull, they have calcium deposits and it gets thicker, which adds that kind of brow ridge, which makes you look a little bit older. Where on the right-hand side, because of the style, it's just completely smoothed out, right? So to me, when I look at this on the right-hand side with the newer style, it doesn't look bad, but it looks like a clear attempt to me to look younger. And
it really looks like two completely different artists.
I know it's the same artist that worked on it though, right? From what I understand.
I'm not sure, but it looks different for sure.
I'm not saying the right side looks bad. Like, I'll be able to play through this remake just fine and enjoy it and enjoy like 95% of everything they did to it. I think I agree with you. I think Shulk is probably where I feel like they made the most changes to it. It's like, here's the thing: when you use like sharp imagery and more soft imagery, you see more sharpness from the original to kind of distinguish that he looks older, like through his hair and like you see through his eyes are a little smaller and more angular. And then you see on the right side, he looks a lot softer. A lot of the features of him are taken, and he doesn't, like I say, doesn't look as sharp in this picture. So it naturally makes him look a lot younger in that regard. And I don't know if you ever seen the thing about cartoons. It's like if you want to make them edgy and cool, you put a lot more sharper, jaggy looking lines about them. And if you want them to be like softer and more calm and more of a gentle type person, you make them you give them like more rounded
rounder shapes. Yeah.
And I feel like they kind of did this to Shulk, not dramatically, but I do feel like he got the most significant changes. Well, and I guess that's because he's the character that you're seeing most of the game. So they probably did the most work on him.
Well, I think because Xenoblade Chronicles 2 was so popular, I think they're trying to mimic that style, and that protagonist was so young. I think that they're trying to close the age gap a little bit, to kind of carry this over and make it a more cohesive franchise. But if you go to 235, for example, you'll see Dunban. And they didn't do that necessarily to Dunban. Like, you can still see, like, he's got a very strong brow ridge. He's got a very strong, like, cheekbones that are high. And then his face is very long, right? He doesn't have they didn't make him, like, a very round face with, like, smooth features. Like, he's got some, darkness around his eyes that give him a little bit of age. And I think that's appropriate because Dunban's an older character. But I like the way Dunban looks here. I don't have any problem. So I don't think it's just solely the art style. I don't think that that's just the style, right? Like, I think that they specifically did that to Shulk, but they didn't do it to the other characters. Cause I mean, I think even at 313, 314, you'll see Fiora, and it's aside from, you know, how big her eye on the right-hand side is with the newer model compared to the left-hand side with the older one, which clearly takes more real estate on her face, right? Which makes the face look smaller. She still has a big, you know, brow ridge and like like a defined cheekbone. It is a little rounded, but she's female, so it makes more sense. But they still have some of those features there. So it seems like a very intentional effort to do that with Shulk, which I don't like. But I think that like the environments and even a lot of the characters do look better, I think, even if it's different style. Like I'm not opposed to the art style outright. I think it does look pretty good.
This new art style doesn't bother me at all. The one thing I've definitely noticed with this though is a lot of stuff looks more plastic now. Like if you look at a comparison of Ryan and Dunban again, like you see like their hair and everything like that, and when you see like go to the comparison thing, it's like it's got more of that plastic look now. Like it doesn't look as natural. It looks like you could take the Lego piece off the top of their head.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, like I think that the environments are so much more detailed. Like it looks, the environments don't look plasticky at all. I don't think, like, especially with the added lighting effects, and it just looks really, really good. I think like the towns and everything like that, it looks excellent, like a real step up, which I'm a big fan of. Like actually, like I think like even like real lighting, like I was showing that laboratory where the metal actually looks like metal, I think looks great. It's just some of the character models are not the route I would have gone. So
yeah, I think you're probably right that it is being done in an effort to make the franchise feel more consistent, right? So, since the newer one, Xenoblade 2, is in more of a anime style and look to it, and even Shulk's model in Smash Brothers, which you know is HD game as well, it looks more anime like, right? Like with the larger eyes and such. Like he looks younger in that too. So I think they're trying to like make it more consistent with the more recent material.
well, yeah. So I mean that's really all I have to say with the art style. I mean with this one, like if he grew like a little beard, it would look weird. Right?
It would. Yep.
I personally have no problem with the art style actually at all. If this game came out for the first time and
it
this
looked like this,
never released, like I would be perfectly fine with this. I would even say it's better looking than your typical generic looking JRPG. Like these characters still look more unique and you know, and more interesting still.
yeah.
But I'm a person that loves that old like watercolor looking type art of the past, and Xenoblade, the Wii version, you know, I think they translated their artwork pretty well to the game.
Well, the thing
it's sad to see that they weren't able to fully realize that in this HD remaster, but instead they decided to take a different route to make it, like Stan said, maybe more consistent with the or more consistent with Xenoblade 2. But like I said, it still looks good, but I'm not going to argue with anyone that says the original looks better than the Switch style-wise, not graphics-wise. Graphics-wise, Switch version obviously dominates it, but in terms of
I just get so annoyed though with some of the marketing, because I see like Nintendo like tweeting out like before and after, and they're showing like Wii screenshots, and then they're showing this like new version, and I'm like, well, no, there's something in between besides the 3DS version. Let's be real here, Nintendo. I emulated this on the Dolphin emulator, and I played it at 1080p. And if you showed like a before and after of my upscale on the emulator versus the Wii version, there's no comparison. The upscaled version looks so much better. It looks so much cleaner. It looks a lot better. Obviously, I still think this remade version is just texture wise is much more detailed.
Of
But
course, you purchased the game first before emulating it, correct?
yeah, I mean, if you want, I mean, no, I mean, yeah, go buy the game. Buy the game on the Wii. I mean, you can't really buy it. I guess you could buy it in the Wii shop, or is that even still up? I don't know. But
The Wii U shop, I believe, is still up technically.
so
They don't update it. They update like they get maybe a game once every 3 months.
yeah. So you have an option there to do that, or the 3DS version. But
that would require buying a Wii U though.
yeah. So
I did play the 3DS version, and it's not a bad port, but the resolution is lower. The frame rate isn't as great, and it is very much a straight port. They did nothing to enhance the experience in any way. So
but I mean, it's an option. If it's the buying a Wii U is not what you want to do, and you don't want to play this remake for some reason, which I think this is a perfectly fine version to play. So, anyways,
Dolphin is the best way to play the original Xenoblade, without a doubt.
the Dolphin system.
UI mod.
Yeah. Well, and just one final clarification here. Because I didn't bring this up. The reason why it doesn't sit well with me when they made the character look younger, aside from liking everything else in the way the game looks, is I've always had a personal gripe with JRPGs with like little kid characters, right? And so it kind of takes me out of the moment, right? Even in the Final Fantasy IX, my favorite Final Fantasy, Aiko, I like the character. She ended up winning me over, but I just ignore the fact that she's 4 years old, because otherwise it just takes me out of the experience. It's ridiculous. There's no 4-year-old going into combat. I'm sorry. There's no 4-year-old going into, it's stupid. But I could just accept it. But I would rather it not be the case.
Right. Shulk is definitely not as offensive as Rex is for into this new version at all.
Okay, but hold on.
Shulk is 18 years old.
Yeah, but I understand.
He still looks like 18.
I understand that he's supposed to be 18, but when you and I'm this isn't coming out correctly, but when you purposely make the character look younger, it just rubs me the wrong way. It's like on the artwork of the Final Fantasy X remaster, when they've smoothed out Titus's face to make him look younger. It's like why did you think that was more marketable to do that? I just don't like that games move in that direction where they feel like the characters have to be really young. I do agree with you. Shulk is clearly older than Rex, but I think they just wanted to make that age gap a little smaller. But like right now, Shulk almost looks like he could be like Dunban's like son or something. He's gotten like 4 years younger. It looks like, even if lore wise, he's still 18,
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still going to buy the game. I think probably, I don't know if I'll replay the entire game, but I do want to at least give this version a shot. So
yeah.
Anyways,
one other thing that I did notice to end the, no, it's fine. But we can end this on a positive note with the, I noticed if you go back to the trailer that they showed.
Mm-hmm. I have that playing right now.
Okay, so at 2:59,
okay,
you get to see the new UI for the equipment screen, and the UI looks much cleaner, I think, than the original. The original had kind of like an unattractive, like brown background for the characters, like when you were in the menus. This is like kind of more of like a clean look. And right at 2:59, you can see his current equipment on the left, but then there's also a separate box that says appearance. So it looks like you can customize the like how the character will appear in the cutscenes. Right.
So
something I hated about the original was I hate looking like a freaking circus, someone from the freaking circus.
Yeah, because you'd have. Go ahead.
So yeah, you would have this very serious scene, and then there's like Shulk half naked in a bathing suit, and like people are like, "Why is he wearing that?" Like, because it has good stats.
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
I hate that. I'm totally with you. That's just such a quality of life update to this version that almost like kind of counteracts my criticism of, making Shulk look like a little boy.
At least you can customize his costume. It appears, at least maybe not right away, but very early in the game, if you want him to look consistent in all the cutscenes, but still have the gameplay benefits of the better equipment, like Eric mentioned, you'll be able to do that, right? You'll be able to fill out that appearance with something that you like and just leave it as that moving forward for the rest of the game if you want.
It'll also motivate people who are glamour before stats to fully experiment with the system instead of like trying to keep the characters as consistent in their clothing as possible, even if it means like getting stat decreases from it. So it'll solve that issue immediately.
Yeah. So that's a big improvement, I think.
Yeah, that'll be huge. I'm all about it. So if Shulk, you can't possibly think Shulk could be possibly having a chance with Milia, given the the look of it, then you can change it. So I'm about it.
One more thing to bring up was the Xenoblade trailer is that there is a special epilogue.
Yes.
After that takes place after the main story of the game. Here's the real cool thing, though. I know a lot of people would want to rush through the story just to get to that epilogue, but they are actually offering it right at the start of the game instead of having to beat the game first. So if you've already beaten Xenoblade and you want to see this epilogue that badly first before experiencing the game again, the option is available.
Well, very cool. Yeah. So they're making a lot of good moves with this, and even I was listening to some of the remastered soundtrack. Awesome. Like a lot of the redone songs and stuff. It sounds really, really good. So, I mean, it's a pretty good version.
Yeah.
So, other Nintendo Direct news, we have a surprise announcement. This is an RPG, but we have some Panzer Dragoon here. So, fans here. So, Panzer Dragoon Remake launched on Nintendo Switch March 26th. It's $25 exclusive to Switch. From what I understand, it's kind of the remake needs some work. It's stable, it's playable, it's kind of fun, but they're still updating it. Like they're still adding some additional features. So,
yeah, from what I have heard, there are some problems with it. Not any necessarily game-breaking problems. Excuse me. There are some quality of life things it definitely needs to match up with the classic it was before. Some things I have heard are things like the controlling feels a bit janky, and the dragon actually is bigger than he was in the original game, and because of that, it's actually harder to dodge things in the game just because of it. So they definitely will need to make some adjustments with it to make it a much better game. But it is $25. It's not that expensive. So if you really are curious and you're a Panzer Dragoon fan, I'm very sure you'll find some enjoyment in it. But there are clearly some issues with it right now. So maybe it's best to wait.
Yeah.
See where they go from there and watch some review videos of people who have played it before then, obviously, and make your own decision if the remake's worth venturing to it or not.
From what I understand, the biggest criticisms I've seen, besides the stuff that you've kind of brought up here, was that or that they're adding in, is that they're going to add in motion controls, right? So the Switch has the ability to do motion controls, and people feel like this game would have been perfect for that. And then also There's little issues, like I guess the left, like kind of one of the buttons is a slight delay to it, which is weird. That they're currently addressing. So it's just stuff like that they're still adding, and I think they promised to add another level or something into it also. So
Yeah, it's an on-rail arcade shooter for the most part, so motion control is 100% welcome. If I can give Star Fox Zero any credit in its control scheme, is that I did like that I could move the controller and the aim reticle would go with it. That was really nice. It made it feel precise in that regard, besides the fact that you had to look down at the screen and then up. But if we were in a perfect world where you could look at the TV screen and aim with that I mean, motion control and gyroscope and the controllers, it's such a welcome addition to everything. So I do hope they add that in.
yeah, I think that for me, like I'm interested in this game. $25 is not. I'm not feeling that right now. I think that I'm going to wait for it to go on sale. I think that, like probably a Black Friday sale or something like that. I bet you this thing will get down to like $10.
Yeah, I saw it in the eShop and I was like, oh man, I've been wanting to play this. And, and then right when I was thinking about getting it, I was like, hold it. I was like, hold on, let me see what the reviews are. Let me just make sure this isn't a broken mess of a remake. And then I saw like the mediocre reviews for it. I'm like, oh, good thing I didn't hit that button.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it looks fun to like kind of like I like download and just be able to have it on the Switch always and just kind of stop what I'm playing and play this for like 10 minutes and do a level and then go back to whatever I was playing before, like something like that. So makes sense to me. So there was some other announcements / coverage on the Nintendo Direct. This is going to be a little quicker here, but we have Trails of Cold Steel 3 is launching on the Nintendo Switch on June 30th, 2020, or June 30th, 2020. And a free demo is available on the eShop right now. So, and apparently the save data carries over to the release version of the game. I didn't download the demo because I played Bravely Default 2 demo over the weekend. And so that's kind of where I was focused on, mainly because I haven't played all these games. So I'm not as excited as other people are.
That's pretty awesome, though. I'm glad Falcom is getting on this trend of, try the game first. If you like it, then buy the game and carry your save data over. I think that's really helping sales more than
anything else.
No.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We also got some updates on the Pokemon Sword and Shield expansion pass, Part 1, Isle of Armor. And we've covered that several times here, just, the entire controversies surrounding this in Pokemon Sword and Shield and the DLC. But we ultimately, at least me and Eric, decided that we're probably going to get this at some point. But the new Gigantamax, I can't remember how to say it, forms for the evolved form of the 3 Sword and Shield starter Pokemon. We saw that. So then we saw a new gym is available. Training there gives you a new legendary Pokemon, Cubfu. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Cubfu, yeah.
Cubfu.
Like Kung Fu, but he is a cub. So it is Cubfu.
Oh, wow.
Very creative, right?
Very creative, yeah. And then there's also 2 Towers of Shadow and Water. So you can only fight with Cubfu. That's my new favorite Pokemon. Or is this a gym? No, this is a legendary Pokemon, okay. And Cubfu alone to take on one of the towers. If you complete a tower, Cubfu will evolve and learn a new move, which is different depending on which tower you choose. What's his evolved name, I wonder? Do we know?
It was in the trailer. I don't remember it right now.
Cubfo?
No, it was longer.
Cubfo show? Okay.
He gets bigger and bulkier,
More food-like? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I think they kind of tack this on at the end just to have something of a big franchise there to kind of like just put a seal on it to close this out. Cause,
yeah,
I don't know. I guess they could have closed with Xenoblade, or Bravely Default, but, regardless, pretty cool. And, then then they also had Bravely Default 2, which we're going to have some demo impressions here shortly. So maybe we can just kind of save our thoughts on that. But let's go ahead and just jump into some housekeeping here. While we do that, I'm going to put back up the RPG character that we had last week. Now, we started this new thing, if you're not sure, and this is where we're putting a silhouette of a JRPG character on the screen, and then we're asking for people to go ahead and guess that. And the first one we did was from Breath of Fire 4, and people got it immediately. People it was just like 6 comments, right? With people guessing it, and they all got it. This one, last week, we had one person take a stab. They were just kind of joking, saying that they don't know at all what it is, but it looks like a dinosaur or like a raptor or something like that. And that is incorrect. But Stan's going to give us a clue here what this is. So Stan, you want to just give him a clue here?
Sure. You have it on the screen?
Yes, I currently have it on the screen right now.
Okay, so yeah, this is definitely a harder image than the last one we did, because like Hat said, people got it right away, and we thought it was pretty tough. So, but yeah, the hint is that this is a character from the Mana series of games.
So boom, there you go.
So
from the Mana series of games.
Mana, yeah.
And the reason we're aside from just having something different in the podcast and make it a little bit more fun, is what we're offering here also is after we get done with the Final Fantasy VII Remake and that kind of slew of games there, we're going to actually be putting out a collection of a handful of games that we Stan, Eric, and myself are wanting to do a discussion on. Devote an entire episode to discussing the game, probably replay the game. And, these are games that we want to talk about. And we're keeping track of the people that are guessing in the comments. And we're giving people that guess it right the first time. Like the first person that guesses it right, there's a little time code, right? We're giving that person 2 points. Then if you guess it right after that, you're getting 1 point. And we're keeping track of the name and the points. And then once we decide to, pick the next game that we're going to cover, we're going to ask the people that took part in this what to vote on the game. And whoever has, however many points you have, that's how many votes you get. So if you've just been crushing it, you're going to have more votes than other people, and you're going to be able to sway what game we cover on here in the future. So just keep that in mind. This current character, we'll keep this character as the mystery character until someone gets it. And if no one gets it this week, we'll probably add another clue on next week to make it even more obvious. But this is from one of the Mana games. So if you're not sure, maybe look up characters and see if you can figure it out. A little housekeeping here. We are media partners with RPGFan.com. They are obviously an RPG website. They've been around since the late 90s. There's a lot of great reviews on there. They do a lot of other things on there like soundtrack reviews, in addition to game reviews, news, and they have 2 other RPG podcasts on their website. Random Encounter, which is news and discussions, opinions. It's twice a month. It's pretty similar to what we do here. And then they have Retro Encounter, which is more of a book club styled RPG podcast where, they go super in depth on a certain game. And so that can be a lot of fun too, if they're covering a game that you really like. Or just a game you're interested in, or just want to kind of see what it's all about, but maybe you don't have time to play it. And this week they have written reviews for Neo 2, Yakuza 5, and Grand Blue Fantasy Versus. And so I strongly suggest you go check them out. Now for our YouTube channel, we were planning on doing our Final Fantasy VII discussion yesterday, but Hat had not beat the game yet. I've beaten the game several times before in my life, but I wanted to replay it just to have it like fresh in my memory, and with kind of replay it with that lens of, hey, I'm going to be talking about this instead of me just playing it for pure enjoyment. So, and we wanted to be able to play the demo this weekend also for Bravely Default. So we're going to be covering that episode or that game this week. And then we'll be putting that episode out on Monday. So that'll be next week, Monday. That will be the podcast for that week. And we're just doing that so we can breathe a little bit, because trying to do 2 podcast episodes in a single weekend is a little tough right now. So that'll be the podcast next week. So if you want to make sure you don't miss that, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and that way you can stay up to date with that episode and anything else in the future that we have coming out. All right, so let me get this character off the screen here. And we're going to get into our Bravely Default 2 impressions. I have not beaten the demo, but I played maybe 2.5 hours of the demo, and I really liked it, but I'm interested to hear what you all have to say. So who wants to start us off?
I like it enough. I like the backgrounds in this one. Definitely a big issue of mine is I don't really care for the rubbery looking characters in this one. It's really destroying from the like classic story book backgrounds that they're trying to go for in this game again from the first one. And the first one blended itself so well together with it. And I don't know why that couldn't have continued in this game, because they look so out of place now, and I don't feel like there's any real finer detail to the character models, and it does bother me. In terms of the gameplay and the battle system, though, it's fine. It's very much like the first one. If you are familiar with Bravely Default and Bravely Second, then you'll be right at home with this one.
See, I really liked it. I was not bothered by the characters at all. I'm not going to say like I prefer these kind of like, I don't want to say chibi, but chibi characters, but I was more focused on like the backgrounds and the town environments that I thought looked just like really, really good with this almost like water painting styled of like backgrounds. It's just, it feels very like 90s ish. And I'm a big fan of it. And I think it just looked really, really good. And like the gameplay just was like so enjoyable too for me. I mean, I spent an hour and a half just grinding in the desert, trying to like upgrade all the equipment on all my characters before continuing on with the demo. I thought the music was great. I thought the voice acting for a JRPG, I like voice acting is traditionally not very good unless it's like a AAA game, right? This,
I don't know. I'd argue the
voice acting
in the first one was not bad.
Yeah, but I'm just saying in general, like JRPGs tend to not have great English voice acting. Like we talked about with the Trials of Mana demo last week, where I was like, okay, I need to turn the Japanese like voices on, right? This one, I did not have that thought at all. Like I thought the voice acting was great. I didn't have an issue with any of it. So I'm like, dude, I'm on board with this game. Like I can't wait to play it. Like for the full game to come out anyways. And I think it's awesome, by the way, too, that this demo is like a side story from the main game. So it's kind of like its own separate entity, right? They even made it a little bit more difficult than the main game. They said just to let you get used to the battle system and really force you to learn it. But it's almost like getting its own separate like little mini game, because I don't know. It's just cool that they put that much effort into it. They didn't just give you the first hour of the game, you know?
Yeah, they actually did the same thing with the first one.
See, I never played the demo.
They gave you a what if scenario of the desert village, I believe. And they let you play a demo that to get used to the combat system. They kind of did similar things with it. It's really cool that they did it again, because I really liked it when they did a demo like that the first time. It's like you get like a sense of how the world is without actually getting like spoilers or anything. So
yeah, I mean,
like, so you don't feel like you're retreading it again when you get the main game.
Well, it just takes extra effort, and you know, it shows that they're putting in the effort. And then also sometimes with demos, like, you know, that's not really like, you don't, if you're going to try an RPG out, you don't want to just play like the first 2 hours of an RPG, because that's not really showing off what it has to offer. A lot of times it's really easy. Like half of it's tutorials, you know, this is actually a beginning, middle, and end, right? So I think it's a great move. But Stan, what did you think about this demo?
There's a lot of content in it, which is
That's
surprising.
Free,
Yeah.
dude. Free.
Yeah, free demo, and I got 3 hours out of it, and I beat the boss at the end, and then there's even more that you can do after that. So I didn't venture into that. I put it down after that, but I was surprised. I thought like it would be a demo that like, maybe started you at the dungeon and then you just play to the end or whatever, and you could maybe replay it if you wanted to try different class combinations, but no, that's not the case. And I was surprised that well, not surprised, but like Eric mentioned, the art style looks great, especially on the field maps, right? Where your characters move around on the field maps. And yeah, I'm not a huge fan of the characters, like the kind of, for lack of a better description, chibi style looking characters. Where like the head takes up, like
most of the real estate of the body.
Yeah, 40% of the total model, but it is what it is. It doesn't look bad at all. It's just different. It's just not my cup of tea. But
I don't have a problem with that aesthetic as much as what they use to create it.
It looks too smooth, like too
way too smooth, like too rubbery.
Yeah, almost like
See, it doesn't bother me.
Toyish, yeah.
It ultimately doesn't bother me. It's not a deal breaker by any means. I just thought that they translated the artwork much better in the first game than they are in this one.
Mm-hmm.
Like these look like kind of more basic 3D models.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the environment? Well, go ahead, Stan. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, it is what it is. It's not my favorite thing, but yeah, it doesn't bother me to the degree where it's like, oh, I'll never buy the game or something. So
yeah. I mean, that's why I am a lot of times. There might be some small things that bother me here and there, but more times than not, it's not enough to make me not go get the game.
I think the reason it doesn't bother me is, and I do agree with you that I would have preferred if they weren't that like kind of like almost like clay like model, right? But I think the reason like I still kind of like it is that the character designs I still think are really well done. Like the outfits and like the just the design of the characters is very non-generic to me. I don't know. It looks really good to me. It like really detailed and just a lot of character to it. So I think it looks good. I think that kind of makes up for it for me. So,
man, I really hope we get a cool, weird, twisted ending again, like the first game. I still can't get over how much I love that. I didn't like
let's not spoil it.
The amount of side quests from that you had to do at the end if you wanted to be a completionist on it.
Yeah.
But the end result of it was fantastic. Without spoiling. Go play the game if you haven't. What's wrong with you?
Yeah. But yeah, I think this is going to be a good release. I mean, I think this is, I know I didn't play the second game, even though this is called Bravely Default 2. I didn't play Bravely Second. Right? I only played the first one.
Well, this is a new world, right?
This is a new world.
I believe so, yeah.
Bravely Second was a good game. I wouldn't say it's better than the first one, but if you couldn't get enough of the first world, then Bravely Second's a good enough game.
Sure. But I know that there was people that didn't particularly, like you said, that it wasn't as good as the first one, basically. Like it was okay, but it wasn't as good as the first one. Some people were even more disappointed with it. So it seems like, generally speaking, the fan base is excited about this one. They feel that a lot of the issues they had with the second one have been kind of resolved here. At least it seems like, anyways, with the demo. So, yeah. Stan, this was your first Bravely Default game, though, right?
Yes, I have not played the original.
How did you feel about the combat? Did you like the system?
I like it. Well, the combat itself is not super complex other than, you know, the brave points and the default system, right, in order to get more points.
Mm-hmm.
So you're kind of just trying to manage that. That's like really the core aspect of the combat, because if you don't use that, right, if you never default and just like try and attack and use magic and stuff like a normal kind of very standard battle system, then you're not really engaging with the game very much, right? Not like how they want you to. So
Yeah, I mean, so in the first game, you definitely needed to take advantage of that system to get
Mhm.
anywhere with it. Because if you just kept fighting the normal way without using bravely or default,
yeah,
it's like the fights took forever.
yeah,
And
especially since the enemies will, right? The enemies will use the system against you.
yeah,
So you got to use it right back against them, otherwise you're gonna be in for a rough time. In
I mean,
terms of
yeah. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
okay, yeah, I was just gonna say in terms of the bigger appeal of the game to me is the class system, you know, which is very much in the vein of like a Final Fantasy Tactics or Final Fantasy V style class system, like the old school stuff, you know, where you have a main job and a sub job, right? And you earn more points, you earn job points through there, which gives you more skills, which then you can mix and match abilities, you know, on different jobs and create different combinations. And that's really fun. That's like a tried and true formula that if you stick to it and, you know, maybe try and tweak it here and there, put like a little, you know, little spin on it with your different games, but like as long as you have that core concept, like you have a pretty compelling character progression system.
I wonder how much we can break this sub job, or how much we can exploit it this time.
Yeah.
Because Final Fantasy V, especially, they had sub jobs in that game too.
Mhm.
And the thing I love to do is I like to get Ranger maxed out and Ninja maxed out on the character and put them back on Freelancer so they can equip any weapon. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
get like two of the strongest weapons. I put X Strike, which attacks 4 times, and then put on Dual Wield. So the character actually attacks 8 times in a row,
Yeah.
and it takes a ton of damage off the enemy.
Yeah.
And of course, Final Fantasy Tactics by endgame, you can exploit the hell out of that system. It's real fun to do though, but you really need good knowledge of the games to do that type of exploitation.
Mhm.
And you do got to put a little grind to work into it on top of that. But it is fun to do. I wonder if it'll kind of be the same with this. Bravely Default had some real good OP combinations that could get you through the game very smoothly. I would imagine this one will probably be no different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I like the demo. I'm excited for the game. Do we have when was the release date on this again?
No release date yet.
No
And
release date.
actually, they're looking to get feedback from people on the demo so they can make adjustments for the release of the game. But it is supposed to be 2020.
Yeah, they
Okay.
said 2020.
So
Yep.
maybe later 2020 then, I'm thinking.
Yeah, maybe around holidays or so, or maybe late summer.
Yeah.
I think between September and November it'll come out.
Because, I mean, if you're getting feedback, you know, like you're not, and it's coming out over the summer, then you're not changing anything that's going to be that big. So,
I think the feedback is going to be fine tuning.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be major. I don't think they're going to change the story or the character or the voice actor.
the thing I
No,
really,
probably not.
yeah, the thing I really liked about the demo was, and this is one thing that kind of disappointed me about the main game, was they give you this message at the beginning of the demo that the demo is, they made it more difficult because they wanted you to be able to experience the full, you know, system. They don't want you to be able to just cheese it and not really understand the battle system. I get it. I like the difficulty in this game. It was very satisfying to me, especially starting the game off like that. And so I was kind of like, man, I like, crap. I was hoping the game, like the main game, would be like this too. So maybe they might kind of assess the difficulty and just kind of say like, okay, people actually liked it. We're gonna keep the difficulty where it's at in the demo and the main game. I would be okay with that. So,
Yep.
that's my piece.
Yeah,
I like the game overall. It's good.
Cool.
Same.
Sounds like we're
Yep.
in agreement. And then I think that's it for the Nintendo Direct stuff, right? That we're going to cover here anyways. And so we're going to end things off here with Eric. Eric has been playing Final Fantasy Brave Exvius a little bit. And so this is
War of the Visions, to be particular.
War of the Visions.
Yeah.
Sorry. We got to get that.
Better be.
A very long title.
Oh, yeah.
So
They're
anyways,
trying to beat Shin Megami Tensei.
So this is like well, Eric, go ahead and fill us in on Final
It
Fantasy
is-
War of the Visions, Brave Exvius, or whatever.
Yeah. It is essentially a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy Tactics.
War of the Lions.
Yeah. And it uses almost every element from those games for it. The type of board it uses, the type of tactical scaling it uses, different type of jobs that you can use, and all sorts of different characters that can join your team. That's where the Visions parts come in. It does have a campaign story mode that you go through. And I will say, so far, I'm enjoying the story. The English voice acting is pretty decent. You can switch it to Japanese if you don't like it. The writing is pretty good. I like the characters that they've introduced so far, and I like how they're like slowly working the conflicts in. It's going at a really good pace. The character designs are really good. Like, whoever does the artwork for this should be doing other games very much. I don't know exactly who does it, but like I said, he should be doing other games. The artwork translates beautifully to the character models that they use in the game. They use some kind of cell shading to make it look very close to the artwork. The animations are pretty good. They're not the most spectacular things ever, but they do have unique animations for most of these characters that join your party. The job system in the game is similar to Tactics, but the exception here is that characters that you get in your party have set jobs already. So you have to collect more characters if you want a particular job in your party. But like the main character himself can go between like a knight, which is like more attack based. I forgot what the other job was, but it's kind of like more of a meet in the middle type of deal. And then he can also be paladin, which focuses more on defense and covering people than being offensive. And then you have like I'll use Yeshtola, who's a guest character on there from Final Fantasy XIV. She's a vision that comes in the game, same with Thancred. And she can be a black mage and a white mage. And God, I forgot the other job. I think it was like some kind of scholar type deal. That thing was just kind of like a mix in between the two. So if you want more jobs in your game, you do have to get the characters. There is a gacha system in there. Of course there is. So far it has been very non-intrusive. That you can play through the story campaign and it barely takes any of the stamina bar away. That's the worst thing that happens. Besides that, it hasn't really done anything to wall me. These gacha systems usually don't try to wall you until when you get to end game after you beat the story campaign. That's where they kind of try to draw you in with the gacha mechanics. But you can breeze through the story just fine. So far, for how far I've gotten in, I've played the game for about 10 hours worth. So, and so far it hasn't been abusive in its gacha system. Unlike the Dragon Quest one I played a few weeks ago that came out also. That game was built to be a gacha game. This game, however, feels like it's a legit tactical game that kind of feels like they were forced to put some gacha mechanics in it. just so they could get the game greenlit and released. So I definitely forgive it on that end so far, but I really haven't had to grind on anything. It's been smooth sailing. So it's free on your phone, on your tablet. I mean, try it out. It's got a lot of elements that you'll like if you're a Final Fantasy Tactics fan.
Is the story anything to...
So far, I like it.
Okay.
It has a writing system. It has a writing style similar to Ivalice type storytelling. Not exactly like it, but it does have a similar feel to it.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Was there anything else we wanted to... I mean, it looks good. It looks like more promising for like a mobile title than, you know, we've seen with some of these other in the past Final Fantasy games, right? I know they have their audience, but they've never really seemed like the type of game that I would want. Especially, I know, Eric, you've traditionally been in the same boat. You know, you're not crazy about you know, these types of games, but you know, the fact that you put 10 hours into this game this week, I think that speaks volumes to this being a little bit different, right?
I'll be first to tell you if it's doing scummy stuff from the beginning. Like, I'll tell you, look, you all know me, I'm a big Dragon Quest fan, but this new Dragon Quest gacha game they released is awful. Like, it's built to be a gacha game. It barely has a story. It only has enough story to motivate you to go to the next checkered square in it, and the game just plays by itself. I mean, this game technically has an auto mode, but every time I tried it out, the auto thing, a lot of times it did things I didn't like. And I was like, no, stop doing that. And I just turn the auto off and do it myself. So the auto system I don't 100% recommend using unless you want to grind on smaller things in the game. But and one thing I do want to bring up for is, do characters permanently die like Final Fantasy Tactics, the original one? And the answer is no. They can disappear after the battlefield if they're not raised in time, but they do come back.
You have like a wait, like you have to wait a while and then they come back, or
no? After the fight's done, they're back. You just can't bring them back to the battlefield unless you raise them quickly.
Is there any penalty for them dying, like an injury, or are they just kind of like...
No?
Okay.
And actually, that might be a good idea, because if you got like a super mega rare character through the gacha system and they die and go away, there would be hell to pay.
Yeah.
Dude, that would be intense, actually. That would be... I would have really have to think about what I do, because if I paid money for like a character basically, and like that was on the line, that I will lose actual cash, not just like my time. Like I would lose my time and my cash, right? Like, oh, dude, I would be pissed if I lost a character. So like that would make me like extra cautious, you know?
Yeah.
Unless you had a lot of money, then you could just buy another one, I guess. But
yeah, I was wondering, like, since it's a mobile title though, like, how big are the maps? Because typically with the mobile games, like, they want the experience to be like kind of quicker than like if it was a console, like a full console or a PC game. So I was wondering, like, how big are the maps, and how like many friendly units and enemy units do you have on that map? Like,
there are about the maps are just about as big as Final Fantasy Tactics, and you do turn the map and adjust the map exactly the same way. Like, you hit an arrow and the whole arena shifts. You can zoom in and out of the arena to see what's around you, and you can move, drag to where you want to see it. You have 5 characters of your own that come out, and you can allow a guest character to come in and assist you. And you pick it's from like a roster of people's favorite characters. from like the online mode and everything. So you can pick a character, or you can choose to leave them out and just use your units instead.
All right. Well,
and the enemy count I think has been similar. It's been like 5 to 7. You have to kill on the field.
Yeah, because that then sounds like you can finish a map in the sweet spot of like 8 to 15 minutes or so.
Probably. I will say that the times it's taken to complete a game varies. Like Final Fantasy Tactics could take like 30 to 40 minutes easily. Yeah. I would say each match here takes about 5 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
So it's not too bad. If you're under leveled or something, it's definitely going to take a lot longer. But if you're like on an even playing field, it's about 5 to 20 minutes, depending on what you're trying to get done.
Yeah. Okay. That's good. Yeah, you can kind of pick it up and put it down easy.
Yeah, you can stop mid game and go back to where you were.
Yeah, that's a good design for like a mobile game. You know, just kill 20 minutes and then either keep going or, let that be the end of the session.
The real question is, okay, I'm sorry, Eric, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt you.
Go ahead, man.
I was going to say, the real question is, would this game be better on the Switch than the mobile?
Well, of course.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the UI is built for touchscreen.
Well,
it's not like trying to emulate something. Like they built it from the ground up, knowing this would be for mobile.
Well, the Switch screen's got a touchscreen, right?
I mean, if you made a controller setup for this, you could easily.
Yeah. So, very, very cool. I don't know.
Free. Try it.
Yeah, I guess if it's free, there's no reason. I don't know. Like my phone, though, I have a Note 4, right? So I just refuse to upgrade. But the problem with refusing to upgrade is I have 6 years of crap on my phone. And so, like, anytime I download an app, like, it gives me this notification that I have to delete something. So then I'm, like, just going through all my apps trying to, I don't want to delete that. Oh, okay, I guess I'll delete that. Like, so I have to go through that whole song and dance whenever I have to download a new game. But this seems like this might be worth it, so.
You can do a virtual Android OS if you really want to play.
I don't want to do all that.
Really want to play on your PC, you can do it that way, but might as well just download on your tablet or phone.
Yeah, I'm not to the point where I'm gonna like dramatically alter my weekend to play it. I'll just download it on my phone and give it a shot, and then maybe I'll go from there. But it looks pretty cool though. I'm glad that we're kind of expanding out this, the Evilly side of things, or at least that style of game, right? That's kind of something that's been forgotten by Square basically for a long time now. So it's cool that they're doing something.
It's definitely not a Matsuno game, but it's definitely inspired by Matsuno. I'll say that.
And that's not a bad thing. All right. Do we have anything else for War of the Visions, Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, or anything else that we were talking about, that we want to kind of bring up before we close this podcast off?
That's it, I think.
Cool. All right. So guess the RPG character. Let us know in the comments. You can sway how we're going to play games in the future. Next week on Monday, we'll be doing the Final Fantasy VII PlayStation 1 discussion. It's going to be a full discussion on the game. So if you have not played Final Fantasy VII, I don't know, try to beat it this week so you can not be spoiled next week, because we're going to be talking about the game. And then after that, we'll be in Final Fantasy VII Remake land, hopefully. So, but we'll update you as that progresses. So we will see you all next week. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
See you next time.